So let's look at the world without human-centric design. Okay, so how does this look? The world without human-centric design, what happens a lot of times is you talk to the same customers that your competition talks to, and you ask similar questions, and you get similar answers. Why? Because the customers can only articulate what they can articulate. So what both of you are getting is, quote unquote, the articulated need or explicit need that the customer is telling you. Nobody is trying to figure out the unarticulated or implicit needs that the customer is not able to communicate. And so you both got the same information, you go and build your product, they look exactly the same. So at that point, what happens? At that point, it becomes a commodity. It becomes a commodity. And if your products are so identical, only thing you're competing at that point is on price. And if you start competing on price, only thing that happens is you destroy the profitability, not only of your own company, but of the entire industry. So that's what happens, when you start working. That's one of the things that happens when you start looking at a world without human-centric design. The next thing, another thing that happens in the world without human-centric design, you end up with a faster horse. What does that mean? So Henry Ford, who invented the first automobile, Ford Model T, he once said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would say, I want a faster horse. Why? Because people were using horses as the primary mechanism to commute. And so their implicit need was they wanted to go faster. So they knew what they currently use is, in their current paradigm, they use horses. And so most people, whether it's consumer or producers, they're constrained by their current paradigm and current limitations of the paradigm. So only thing they could think of is, okay, what if I kind of feed and nurture that horse better so that that horse, he or she, can go somewhat faster? Because again, the need really is, I want to go from point A to point B much, much faster. But they didn't tell Henry Ford they're looking for automobile, a completely different solution, which will take me significantly faster in a lot more automated fashion and whatnot, right? And so that's what happens, because oftentimes the consumers don't know what they exactly want until you show it to them. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. One more thing that happens in the world without human-centric design. Look at this picture. There's something drastically wrong with the picture. This was a packaged food product brand created by Colgate. Knowing the Colgate brand and the way it is associated with toothpaste, this was absolutely the disastrous branding. So what happens is, give me 1 second. So what happens is, when you don't fully understand and empathize the current reality, like what the Colgate brand currently stands for in the mind of the consumer, right? You end up with a wrong product and a wrong brand. Let me go to the next slide. What else happens in a world without human-centric design? You end up with a scope creep and complexity, because different people will tell you different things, and you will try to accommodate all of them, and it will become a Swiss Army knife. Okay? So when you don't make trade-offs and choices, you end up with scope creep and complexity. Again, strategy equal to trade-offs. Keep that in mind. Strategy equal to trade-off. If you do not make trade-offs, you will end up with a product, that is really not solving or delighting anybody particularly. So there is a quote from Steve Jobs. He says, in order for you to do 2 or 3 things really, really, really well, you have to say no to 1,000 other things. That's what is trade-off. So Ken Olsen, he was the chairman of Digital Equipment Corporation, which was a very large computer manufacturing company back in 70s. And what he said was, there is no reason anyone in the world would want a computer in their home. And imagine now the world we are living in. Okay. There is a quote from Steve Jobs. A lot of time people don't know what they want until you show it to them. So what's the crux here? The crux is consumers usually are not the source of innovation. You have to try and come up with something and show it to them, and you have to think beyond the constraints of your today's paradigm. Otherwise, you will try to create a faster horse